anytime we do that recursive formula, that's where you have to have the first and the nth, and you have to tell me when n is greater than 1. So this is our recursive. You always have to have something like that. When it's explicit, explicit is trying to tell you to look at point slope form. What? Point slope form is explicit. It just sets up so beautifully for that, except we don't use y. We use a sub n. And then we still have our slope, and instead of x, we go with n minus 1 and plus. Because what's nice, if you start in with the recursive, is you know the first term, right? So right away I can go, oh, my first term is 8. That's what goes here. And then when I look at the recursive, this is telling me the difference. We think of that difference in point slope form as our same thing as our slope. So this is negative 5 is the change. Okay, so when you're going between those two, I think a lot of times if they give you a sequence, if you can start recursive, then you can find more information in the explicit, because you guys know how to work with point slope easier. This one's kind of ugly. So a sub 1. Nathan, you want to start us off? A sub 1 should be what in that recursive formula? Yeah, let's go to 40. 10. Okay? So we start with that one at 10. And then as we are looking at that one, Sarah, what's our common difference if we're thinking about it? A sub n minus how much? Oh yeah, n minus 1. Okay, good. Minus 6. So this is kind of that subscript of n minus 1, and we're subtracting 6 each time. So if I was looking to find a later one, we just got to kind of be careful as we are looking at some of those as we do that. All right, so yeah.
And instead of saying 4 n is greater than 1, can we say 1 n is greater than 1?
Nope, you just want to say n is greater than 1, or you don't want to use the word 4 as long as I see this with it, that n is greater than 1. Could you put greater or equal to 1? You could. Right? Because we can't have it be, actually it has to be greater than 1, because it can't be equal. Or n greater than 1. The first one is already taken, right?
So as long as we have the n greater than
N greater than 1.
It's okay.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Just
Yeah.
one question.
All right. So we're on 42. 42 first says write the recursive formula for this as we are taking a look at it. Grace, you want to start us off? What do we know our first one is?
A1 equals 26,400.
26,400. So A sub n. Are you ready with you?
Equals A sub n minus 1 plus 2,050.
Again, you want to put 4n greater than 1, n greater than 1, however we're looking for. Okay. So now we are going to go, Kyrell, to the explicit formula to help us for this one. Because we could add on 2,050 to this one. We could do it how many times?
You could do it for
Because this one isn't too bad, right? How many times do they want us to do it?
for 5.
Yeah. So if I wanted to figure out for 6 years, what could I just kind of be thinking in my head if I didn't want to write out an equation? I could start with this 26,400 and do what?
So 2,050 times 5 added.
Right, because we add 5, because it says for after 6 years, so this is after first year, so we got to go 5
And
in
it'd
it.
be the
Okay.
A, so it's A6 minus 1 would be 8.
Right, so if we think of that, our rate of change is 2,050. 2,050 so this is kind of the explicit. N minus 1, and then we have plus 26, which is kind of exactly what Kyrell said. Would you have had to write this out at all? No. Some of you could have said, you know what, I know that if I'm finding a sub 6, that I'm taking 20, 50, and taking, this would be 6 minus 1, which is 5, which you said, and adding 26, 400. But some of you just looked at this question up here and said, you know what, I'm going to take 26, 400, and I am going to take exactly what Kyrell said and add 5 times 2050. Does it matter that you wrote out an explicit formula first? No. You're just asked that one. But this one was a small number, right? So, I mean, it was 6 years. If it was 35 years, you might want to then go, oh, but you'd still use the same formula and you'd multiply it and do it on your calculators you're looking at, okay? All right, so let's go to number 43. 43, if we are looking at it. Andy, what do you want to start us out with for writing explicit? What all do we know in this?
The,
So we know it's 82 inches tall. Tomorrow it's 91. The next day it's 100. The next day it's 109. What's that trying to tell us?
the slope,
The m equals
plus 9.
plus 9. Okay, our common difference is plus 9. So explicit point slope one, right? We're going to have it kind of like this. You ready? A sub n.
9,
Yes.
n minus 1 plus 82.
Perfect. Right? Because 82 is where we started off when we were measuring. So it says after 16 days. Okay? So if I'm thinking after 16 days, Claire, I'm thinking of doing what? To this equation. I'm going to find a sub 16, right? Okay, go.
16.
So yeah, 16 minus 1, can we just put 15 for sure? Yes. So you want to multiply that. If you have a calculator, 9 times 15, adding 82, should be a total of, what'd you get, Carol?
217.
217 inches. All right. So are you ready
Yeah.
to help us with 44? Explicit formula. Cost of the city bus, $195 one way. Next year the cost goes to $215. The year after it's going to $235, $255. What are they trying to tell us when you read that?
How much it goes up every year?
So that's my rate of change, right? My slope. How much is it going up every year? 20 cents, right? 0.2, 20 cents, okay? Ready to try explicit?
Yeah.
And go. A sub n is equal.
0.2 n minus 1 plus 1.9.
So the cost in 8 years, especially if I'm going to find it. This is why sometimes explicit is nicer, because you can just plug in for the variable, right, for the n. So you do what?
A sub equal 8
Okay.
equals 0.2.
Okay.
And then 7.
7, because 8 minus 1 is 7, right? So we're really taking 8 minus 1 from here, okay?
1.95.
So, still pretty reasonable bus fare probably, right? $3.35 one way ticket a day, okay? Again, answers are in the back as you're looking at these. So 45 through 50. This is our interpreting. this is a big part, you're gonna see this on map testing also, that what does it mean as you are looking at these? So looking at our rates of change, you are always thinking X and Y as we look at this. So as we are doing that first one, what would you say our rate of change is? As I am looking at that one, what would you say it is? How much?
40.
40. Positive 40, negative 40.
40.
Positive 40. What does it mean in terms of the situation? It means what? Because it's 40 over 1, right? But positive 40, okay? What does it mean up here when we're talking about this?
Plus 49.
Okay, so the cost of $40 per what? Per person, right? So the cost is, maybe some people might say the cost is increasing, right? I would take that by $40, and you don't want to write, you could use a slash, or you could say that $40 per person. You could have said something like this, $40 per person this way. I don't care which way you write it, right? So just so I'm understanding that you know you're talking about the variables, okay? Do we want to do 46? We did some of that in our graphing, or do we want to leave that or do that one? You guys got to let me know. Yes, do it. So let's do that one. X-intercept, Y-intercept. When we find Y-intercept means X is 0, and you're finding the Y. When we find the X-intercept means that Y was 0, and we're trying to find our X value. That's the easiest way to do this, yes.
If you put C, what? If you put A.
Yes, you can do the ABC, but some people forget, oh, is it C divided by A or C divided by B for which one? And so if you get stuck and you're on the final and you're trying to find X and Y intercept, if I go to this one and I plugged in Y as 0, I get negative 4X equals 24, and it's pretty easy to find that, right? And I go to this question over here and I replace the X with 0, and I get this equation, 2Y equals 24. And again, it's pretty easy to get 12 for that one, right? And this one is pretty easy to go, oh yeah, negative 6. But it's okay if you remember the C divided by A or C divided, but if you don't, just intercepts mean that the X, in this case, that the Y was 0, here it means that the X is 0. Where is it on that axis? So the thing on the final is I'll sometimes have people go, oh, you mean I can select all of these or that happens? So when we look at number 47, because our slope is positive, should be upwards, right? So see, what is our vertex? They give us 3 options.
D.
Which one?
D.
D? 4, 7, I agree. 4, 7. Because it's always point slope form, which is minus and then a plus. Then we want to think, then the parent function. So parent function, what are you thinking, Andy? Is it going to be wider or is it going to be narrower?
Y.
It's going to be wider. Anytime we are looking at this number being between 0 and 1, that makes it wider, right? Between 0 and 1. Fractions make it wider. Anytime this is going to be greater than 1, that's what makes it narrower when you look at it. So again, look back at some of the units that we were looking at. This one, as we are looking at it, Olivia, what would you say is our slope or rate of change? So 45 and 48 kind of go together. 42 over 1. How'd you find it?
I did I don't know how to explain. I did like 84 over 2 because of the difference of 84 over 2. Then I just divided.
Okay. So each difference, you found the difference in the y's, and you found, oh, when you subtracted of 84 and the difference of the x's from 46 to 2. So each time that same difference came up. changing 84 for the y's by subtracting these two y's, these two always came up the same. Changing y over changing x is how we find the slope. So in this situation, how could you describe what it means? Yeah, the car travels, so we might say the car travels 42 miles per hour, right? That's going to be what our rate of change is. As we look at the next one, Grace, you want to tell us our slope and y-intercept?
I didn't know how to do that one.
What?
I forgot.
Slope and y-intercept. Okay, I have it up here for words because we're doing this heavy in Math 8 also. So when I look at an equation, and this one is set up perfect, so make sure you go back to Unit C, point slope, standard form, slope intercept. Y equals mx plus b, and m is my slope. So, want to give it a shot?
Oh, m equals negative 2/3.
Yes.
And the y-intercept is 3/4.
Yes. Were you trying to make it way harder than you had to?
Yeah, I thought I had to solve something.
Not yet, but later, or on some of those other ones we did, right? All right, so Sarah, starting off on this one, selecting all the statements. So first off, it's not written in slope-intercept form, right? So could we rewrite it in slope-intercept form? What would it look like? Y equals, what would you have to do to get it slope-intercept form? Yeah, subtract 2x, right? And then everything else is nice. So the mistake that people will make is that they think the slope is 2 when actually there it should be. It's negative 2. And what do you have for y-intercept? It is 7. We didn't have to divide anything, right? And then it says, well, what about the x and y-intercepts, right? So it's asked us, we already did the y-intercept, so now we just really need to look at the x-intercept. The x-intercept, Nathan, is when which value is 0. The x-intercept. Should the x be 0 or the y be 0? The y should be 0. So I can go back to this equation and put 2x plus 0, which means 2x equals 7. And now it's pretty easy to find my x-intercept, which Nathan should be. Yeah, that's 7 over 2, right? Not 2/7, but 7 over 2. Okay? And if you think about that, this one right here, this is the 0, 7, right? So if x was 0, y is 7, right? So you could have done it that way also, finding the slope intercept as you were looking at that. All right, so you were asked on these next ones as we are taking a look at it. Yeah,
I have a question.
sure.
How is the slope negative 2?
It's not in slope intercept form. So when you look at an equation in slope intercept form, right, in order for it to be in slope intercept form, you need the y by itself, mx plus 2. Since the y is not by itself, Sarah says I'm going to subtract negative 2x first. So if I get the y and I have one y, it's so easy to find the slope. So key thing, get one y all the time, okay, when you're looking at this. All right, so if you haven't done these right now, I would like you to make sure you do 51 to 54. I'm going to give you just a minute. It is linear, but not continuous. 52, if I was looking at that, should be nonlinear, but it continues. Here we are going to have D. It is nonlinear, and it does not continue, and this is going to be my choice for it. So again, this one kind of goes back to what we were thinking about earlier on the last page when we started with both page 45 and 48, very similar. So it says below Ms. Mitzel, where she's talking about the number of hours that she's driving. They give us this equation, they give us this table. What is the independent variable in our function? Independent is our x, if you could think in science when you're graphing, right? It's kind of what you get to choose. Dependent is what it depends on, that's our y. So anytime you're looking at this, I should be putting then my independent variable. Should it be, in this one, time? And we'd say time in hours. Independent, that's X. So it says, what is the 65 in our equation? If I'm looking at the 65, Sonia, I'd say it is the what? The slope. Definitely the slope, right? Someone could say it's my rate of change. Fast I'm going, but in my equation, that's our slope. The plus 0 in that equation, Celsius means what? The y-intercept is 0, which in this situation means if we have 0 hours, right, you drove 0 miles, which makes sense, right? 0, 0 is 0. So how do you know if the equation is linear? When we look at an equation, anyone remember what determines if an equation is linear? You could say slope-intercept form, but what's the key thing with our variables? The variables have to be to what power? Because pretty soon they're not going to be. And we had some that were not, right? We had absolute value. That was nonlinear. We had some x squareds that were nonlinear. So variables in an equation have to be to the first power. Usually it's not written, but these are understood to be to the first. Okay? Continuous or discrete. Could you drive a fourth of an hour, a half of an hour? Could you drive a fraction? That's what you want to help you decide continuous or discrete. If you can have a fraction of something, it's continuous. If you can't, it's going to be discrete. So like when we talk about selling cookies, usually you're not going to break it in half and give half, or granola bars. You can't open the package and give someone a half, right? So this one should be continuous. And again, if I was explaining it, I'm going to say something like you can drive half of a mile. Or half of an hour, excuse me. Or you can drive a fraction of an hour. Okay, domain and range. Okay, domain and range. Domain is always dealing with our x's, right? Range is always dealing with my y's. Can we have negative hours? So x has to be, in this case, greater or equal to 0. Could you drive for 10 hours, 100 hours? Yeah, I mean, you could. You probably wouldn't want to, but yeah, right? How about our range? Range is going to be my y values. What are we thinking? Everything greater or equal to what? To 0 again, right? For this one, everything greater or equal to 0 for my domain and my range. Because we're thinking of this, right? This is going like this. This is my hours, and this was my miles, right? It can't be negative, so everything's greater or equal to 0 is what we're looking for, right? We're going to get just a little more of these done, and then, so these are the easier equations, right? This is going back to just writing a simple equation or inequality. It's not a system like we just did in Unit D. It's easier, right? So as you are taking a look at these, we're going to do a couple, and then I think we're probably going to stop. So we're going to go through 63, and then if you have time and you want to work on, so 61. Anyone want to take 61? You're planning to go golfing with some friends. Each person pays $23 for a green fee. Your group rents the cart for $15. If the group spends a total of $130, how many people are golfing? Create an equation that represents it. So, want to give it a shot? Go.
23x plus 15 equals 130.
23p, that's my people, plus 15 is equal to 130. Did they tell you to solve it? No, I just said create an equation, right? $23 per person. Could I have 23x plus 15 equals 130? I could have any variable, right? Because I'm looking at that one, okay? So it says answer this question based on your answer from the previous. Okay, the golf cart holds 3 people safely. Can everyone in your group ride? Explain your answer. So now we actually have to solve for how many people are golfing, right? If we only have golf cart holds 3 people, can everyone in your group ride? So if I was solving this, 23p plus 15 equals 130. First step as I'm solving it would be, Andy, to do what? Subtract. I get 23p is 115. Nathan, you got your calculator there. You want to work it for us and get us our answer? We're going to divide by 23. So we get P in this case equals 5. So if the golf cart can hold 3 people, can everyone in your group ride? What would we say? No. 2 people have been left off, right? If we're looking at this one. All right. So let's take a look at that last 63 for today, and I'm going to stop here. So 63 says, you have $300 in your savings account from the summer job during school year, and you spend $12 a week, and you currently have 48. They're trying to tell you a beginning and a rate of change, right? And they're trying to tell you where you want to what you had. And so we know that each week we're spending some money, and we know what we have currently in our savings. So if I'm writing it, Olivia, you want to give it a shot? What are we starting out in our account? $300. And what are you doing?
So
Minusing, right? We're spending money. We're like, hey, every week I'm going to do this. So minus 12 x. Okay. Some people might use W for each week, right? Would it matter? No. And at the end of all this, we had, or we have in our account, the 48, right? And so the question is saying, how many weeks of school have passed if we're down to $48? So you're just going to solve that equation. Okay? As you are looking at